Rome never actually fell. Don't let the last video lie to you. Half of it just moved. In the year 330 AD, an emperor named Constantine looked at a tired, overstretched Roman Empire and made a decision so dramatic it would make a divorce lawyer blush. He picked up the entire capital and moved it, not symbolically, literally. He took a small Greek fishing town called Byzantium, renamed it after himself, Constantinople, and declared this was the new center of Roman power. Yes, the guy named a city after himself. No, subtlety was never a Roman strength. You saw what Augustus did. While old Rome in the West was getting sacked, raided, and eventually handed over to a teenager with an emperor's name and none of an emperor's power, this eastern half kept the lights on, kept the legions paid, kept the bureaucracy running. While the West collapsed into a patchwork of kingdoms run by whoever had the biggest army that decade, the East just didn't. For historians, this surviving eastern half eventually gets a new nickname, the Byzantine Empire. The people living there never called themselves that, by the way. They called themselves Romans. Right up until the very end, 1,000 years later, they still introduced themselves as citizens of Rome. Imagine telling someone in 1450 you're Roman and somehow being correct. This empire is going to survive invasions, plagues, religious civil wars, and at least one emperor who got his nose cut off and came back to rule again. We'll get there. Patience. But it starts here, with one walled city perched on a peninsula between two seas, built to be the most defensible capital on Earth. And for 1,000 years, that wall is going to hold back almost anyone who tries it. Almost. Let's talk about Justinian, because this guy single-handedly proves that marrying well can change the entire course of history. Justinian becomes emperor in 527 AD, with one goal: take back the Western Roman territories that got lost in all that 5th century chaos. Basically, Roman Empire, the reunion tour. And honestly, he almost pulls it off. His general, a guy named Belisarius, reconquers huge chunks of Italy and North Africa with armies that are embarrassingly small for what they accomplish. Imagine winning a championship with a roster you could fit in a minivan. But Justinian's real secret weapon isn't the army, it's his wife, Theodora, and her backstory is wild. She started as an actress and performer, which in Roman terms was basically the lowest social rung you could occupy, and she rises to become co-ruler of the entire empire. Picture dumbing from open mic nights to running the country, except the country is also fighting 3 wars at once. Her biggest moment comes during a riot. Not a small one. The Nika riots of 532 nearly burn Constantinople to the ground, and the mob is screaming for Justinian's head. His advisors tell him to flee the city, pack a bag, get out while you still can. Theodora stands up in front of the entire court and basically says, "Absolutely not." I'm paraphrasing slightly, but barely. She tells him purple, the color of imperial robes, makes a fine burial shroud, and that she would rather die an empress than live as a refugee. Justinian stays. His generals crush the riot. Tens of thousands die in the streets, but the throne holds. That's the kind of empire this is. Constant crisis, constant survival, constant reinvention. Then, in 541, the plague shows up, and not the famous one you're thinking of, an earlier one, and it kills off maybe 1/3 of the population. Kixlabs would like to remind you that nothing puts your problems in perspective like a 6th century pandemic, which is why today's video is sponsored by them. Link in the description, code Byzantium for a discount nobody asked for, but you're getting anyway. Through plague, riot, and reconquest, this empire keeps standing. For now. Here's where the jokes stop for a minute. Because surviving for 1,000 years doesn't mean surviving easily. It means absorbing hit after hit and still getting back up. And the Byzantine Empire takes some of the worst hits in history. In 1071, at a battle called Manzikert, the empire loses most of its territory in Asia Minor to Turkish forces in a defeat so catastrophic it never fully recovers the land. That region had supplied much of the empire's food, soldiers, and tax revenue. Losing it didn't just shrink the map, it cut the empire at the legs. So why didn't that battle alone finish the empire? Because Byzantium had survived disasters before, and its emperors did what they always did: adapted, shrank, fortified, and held on with whatever was left. The capital itself, behind those legendary walls, stayed standing through siege after siege for centuries, after the empire around it had already crumbled to almost nothing. But in 1204, something unthinkable happens. Crusaders, supposedly on their way to fight in the Holy Land, get redirected to Constantinople instead, due to a tangle of debts, political promises, and broken deals. And rather than passing through, they sack the city. Fellow Christians, fellow allies on paper, they loot churches, melt down bronze statues for coin, and shatter an empire that survived almost everything else that history could throw at it. The empire technically continues after this, but it's a shadow of itself, smaller, poorer, surrounded. And then comes the final ending, slow and inevitable, like watching a candle burn all the way down. By 1453, Constantinople is one city, barely defended, facing a massive Ottoman army, equipped with cannons powerful enough to finally break walls that had held for 1,000 years. The last emperor, Constantine XI, refuses every offer to surrender and flee. According to the accounts that survive, he takes off his imperial regalia, picks up a sword like any other soldier, and disappears into the final battle. His body is never confirmed found. The city falls, and with it, the last living piece of the Roman Empire, the one that started with two brothers fighting over a hill nearly 2,000 years earlier, finally goes dark. Okay, deep breath, we're allowed to be normal again now. Because here's the thing, even after 1453, Rome's fingerprints are everywhere. The Ottoman sultans who took Constantinople immediately started calling themselves Caesar of Rome, because apparently even the empire that ended Rome wanted to be Rome. Russian rulers later claimed the title too, calling Moscow the Third Rome. Everybody wanted the brand even centuries after the original company filed for bankruptcy. And honestly, that says everything. An empire that started as a swamp village run by a guy who murdered his brother somehow became a legacy so powerful that people were still cosplaying at it more than 1,000 years after it should have ended. Massive thanks to Kixlabs for funding this 1,000-year fall from grace. Link is in the description. Smash subscribe if you made it this far without flinching, and the extended uncut version with the parts that got trimmed for time is up on the membership tier right now. Next time, we're leaving Rome behind entirely and heading to a kingdom that thought building a giant horse was a great idea. You know the one. See you there.